Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is Africa and the Sudan. And we're fortunate to have with us this morning to talk about Africa and the Sudan, Dr. LMadu1. Dr. LMadu1 is an international lawyer, and he's the president of Pan-Africa, and he has also been involved with a large number of other civic and social organizations in and around Nashville and, of course, in a real sense throughout the world. Dr. LMadu1 is also a diplomat, and he has played a very, very significant role dealing with persons who have come to Nashville from Africa and from the Caribbean and escorting them around and doing a number of things that people who are in charge of such responsibilities do. And Dr. LMadu1, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you.
Dr. LMadu1, what we'd like to do today is to talk about Africa and the Sudan. But I don't think that there is any question that is more important and perhaps more burning in the minds of our audience is the fact that the President of the United States recently made a tour to Africa. And let's start off by having you to give perhaps an assessment of Mr. Clinton's trip to Africa, and from that point to talk about some of the other issues that we are going to talk about today.
Thank you. Well, you know, for a long time, this trip has been anticipated. He has been in office now for over 4 years before he went to Africa. So actually, it was late in coming. We expected that he should have been to Africa during his first term. His wife was the first to go to Africa and came back with good reports. So we are happy that he went. We would have preferred that he went earlier on. As you know, the most significant thing about his trip to Africa is that since the end of the Cold War, Africa has been marginalized in terms of geopolitical importance. And at the same time, this has caused a fall, should I say, in the economies of those countries. During the Cold War, both superpowers and also the other three powers, Britain, France, and China, were pouring money and aid into Africa as part of their proxy war against each other. With the fall of the Soviet Union and the collapse of the Berlin Wall, the importance of Africa insofar as these powers are concerned diminished. So when the president decided to go to Africa, we saw it as an opportunity, not only to give Africa the profile it is due, but at the same time as an opportunity to encourage investments and tourism to Africa. You would observe that when the 7 economic powers have their meetings, Africa is never mentioned. You might hear of South Africa one way or the other, but it seems like Africa doesn't exist in economic terms insofar as the world is concerned. So what we think is that this visit and also the law passed by Congress, the Business Opportunity Act for Africa, will help not only to increase investments in Africa, but also to attract more tourism. A lot of African countries, depend on tourism to survive. So it's very important from that regard.
You know, Dr. LMadu1, I think that some people have talked about the emergence of Africa since the president's trip. Now, certainly I think that it has also been pointed out that Africa really does not need Mr. Clinton to give it credibility. But I think it has also been pointed out that this is the continent with a vast amount of resources and et cetera, and as you are indicating, through investments. But now, we've seen Africa over the 60s and the 70s emerge, and I think that if there is one thing that came out is that the Africa of the 1990s is not the same Africa that many of us know of the 1960s and the 1970s, which is to say that some people still have a mindset of a continent that is still under the process of decolonization as it was in the 1960s and et cetera. Perhaps you would like to deal with that as an issue this morning.
Well, the basic difference between Africa of the 60s, 70s, and 80s is that the process of democratization is moving very fast in Africa. Africans are tired of having despots who sit in power for life and plunder, the continent's resources. You've had people like Mobutu and in Zaire and Nguema in Equatorial Guinea, Bokassa in Central African Republic, Idi Amin in Uganda. These days, Africans want everything that every other people on earth want. Good education, health care, the freedom to choose whom they want, to be in power, and every other thing. So that's what you're seeing. There's a new wind blowing through the continent. And because of that, we think it's time that some of these donor countries attach very stringent terms or conditions for granting loans to African countries. I personally believe that before either the World Bank or the IMF or the United States government or any other foreign government should make it clear that the condition under which aid would be given to any particular African country is that the president or the ruling class agree to elections and at the same time stick to it. If that is not stuck to, then they should withdraw the aid. And moreover, before any aid is given, they should make sure that that aid must get to those, who...
It must go down to the bottom.
Absolutely, absolutely, because what happens, what has happened in the past is that almost 90% of the aid given to these countries never get to where it's supposed to get to. It's never used for what it's designated for. So you find out that, you are pouring money into a drain. And that's precisely what is haunting the continent now. You see, all those billions of dollars that were poured into the continent in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, now the IMF and the World Bank say, we want our money back. That's why you have this structural adjustment program. And because the money is not there to pay, then the IMF insists that these countries must restructure their economies in order to be able to pay back this loan. The interest on that loan alone is at times larger than the loan itself. See? So you find that African countries are in great economic stress because of the structural adjustments program, which is an outgrowth of all the money poured into Africa in those 3 decades that was never used properly. See? So it's very important. But anyway, the catchphrase for the 90s in Africa is trade, not aid. Okay. Africans want to trade on equal terms, with the rest of the continent, the rest of the world, not giving them aid. It's like a welfare system. Africans do not want a welfare system anymore. Trade with us, we trade with you. Buy a pencil from us, we buy a pen from you. As far as it's on equal terms, not prices set somewhere else, So that is very important. So that's what you are seeing now. Africans want aid, trade, not aid. So as soon as the leaders in that country understand, what their people want, then, these changes will continue to grow. But that's the basic difference between the 90s and the other three decades past.
Dr. Madu, we're coming up to our first commercial break, and after which we want to talk about an issue that I know is very, very important to you, and that is the Sudan. After our break, we want you to not only to talk about the Sudan, but talk about the Sudan in reference to what you've already said about Africa, and to give our audience as much information in that second segment as you possibly can, dealing with some of the problems and some of the challenges in the Sudan, because as you've indicated, Africa has moved quite a bit, but there are still some problem areas, and I think that this is one of the problem areas that you're interested in. And of course, we'll talk about that as soon as we come back after our first commercial break.